Good evening, everyone. This is the day the Lord have made, and we shall rejoice and be glad in it. Oh, magnify the Lord with me. Let us exalt his name together. For the Lord is good, his mercies everlasting, and his truth endureth throughout all generation. Let God arise and let all of our enemies be scattered. Again, we are excited about what we're about to experience on this Friday night. My God, Juneteenth, the importance of it, and are we free? Well, come on in. Oh, I see my girl on, Siobhan. Good to see you, Siobhan, sweetheart. Good to see you, Siobhan. Tracy, Wanda, Doris, Tashawn, Nakisha, Beulah, First Lady Beulah. Good to see you, Beulah. Good to see you. Sean Clay, the man of God. Nairi, good to see you. Andronetta, Benjamin Hill, good to see you. Lala, good to see you tonight. Y'all keep coming on in. Hit the share button. Good to see you, Kim. Hey, Apostle Randy M. Walker. Randy, you don't want to miss this. This is going to be awesome, man. You hear me? This is going to be awesome. I got Kirkland Hall all the way from Houston, Texas, representing the Community of Faith Church. Good to see you, man. Good to see you, Kirkland. Y'all keep coming in. This is going to be a tremendous night. Hey, Christina. Good to see you, Christina. Good to see you. Good to see you. Good to see you. All right, come on in. Hey, CC. Hey, good to see you. Good to see you. Listen, by way of a very sobering announcement, Bishop Alfonso Scott from St. Louis, Missouri, his wife passed today from complications with COVID-19. So let's keep the Lively Stone Church family in prayer. Let's keep Bishop Scott and his family in prayer. We're very close families, Page family, Scott family. Our churches are very close, so keep them in prayer. My father and my mother, we're all very close to them. So please keep Lively Stone in prayer on the passing of First Lady Scott there, all right? That's on a sobering note. So let's keep them in prayer. Keep coming on in. Keep on coming in, Elizabeth. Good to see you. Mother Stevenson, what a joy. What a joy. What a joy. What a joy to see you. DeAndre Moore, good to see you. Francine Fowler Carter, good to see you. Man, this is going to be awesome tonight. Keep coming in. 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 I'm going to give you another maybe 30 or 40 seconds, and then we're going to get started with the program tonight. There's so much for us to discuss. There's so much to get into. I've got some great panelists tonight. Oh, that's going to bless us. We are going to be truly inspired on this evening. So share, hit that share button, send up some hearts, hit the share button on Instagram. I want to get as many people into this conversation as I possibly can tonight. I want to get as many people into this conversation as I possibly can tonight. We're celebrating Juneteenth, and we're going to get into what all of that means tonight. All right. So please share. Let's enjoy this discussion. This is interactive, so I want you to interact. Good to see you, Ephraim. Good to see you, Karen from Chicago. Good to see you. Man, I got people from Chicago, from California, from Canada. I see some folk from South Africa coming in. This is going to be wonderful. Hey, Yada, it's good to see you. It's good to see you. Keep coming in. Keep coming in. Keep coming in. And I think what we'll probably do, let me do this. Let me get started tonight with a word of prayer. And then once I have this invocation, short invocation, then I will introduce to you my panelists for tonight. and then we will get into this discussion. All right, let's pray. Father, we thank you again for being so gracious, for being so mindful, just for being a good God. We know that this is the day that you've made, and we shall rejoice and we will be glad in it. God, tonight, bless every individual that logs into this virtual space, into this cyber sanctuary, onto this digital platform. Let their hearts be receptive to hear or to receive, and their ears open to hear what thus saith the Lord. And also, God, let this be a time of deep reflection and transformation in the lives of your people. We thank you, and knowing you the way that I do, what I have decreed and declared has already come to pass. In Jesus' name, amen, amen, amen. All right, let's get started with this conversation tonight. Let's get started. You ready, Frankie? You ready? Let's get ready with this conversation tonight. Okay, let me introduce. Let me start introducing my panelists first. Let me do that. Let me start introducing my panelists tonight. And I'm so grateful that they're with us. I may not read all of their bios in its entirety, but I will read enough so you'll understand the type of quality, insightful communicators that we have on our panel tonight. The first panelist that I would like to come join me into the cyber sanctuary is the Honorable Reverend Dr. James Henry Harris. Dr. Harris is the Distinguished Professor of Preaching and Senior Research Scholar in Religion and Humanities at Virginia Union University. And he also pastors the Second Baptist Church in Richmond, Virginia. He holds various graduate degrees and earned both the Master's in Philosophy and PhD degree from Old Dominion University, along with the Doctor of Ministry degree from United Theological Seminary. Dr. Harris has authored over 10 books. His latest book is Black Suffering, subtitled Silent Pain, Hidden Hope. I am so excited for the contribution that our Dr. James Harris is going to bring to our panel on tonight. So let's receive Dr. James Harris. Hey, Doc.
Hey, Bishop, how you doing today?
Bishop, Doc, it's so good to have you with me tonight. You know, I have not told anyone yet that you are my favorite professor. You still are my favorite professor, and you are the one who is responsible for teaching me the dialectic method of preaching. But we will talk about that. We will talk about that later.
All right.
My next panelist is a tremendous woman of God, and we are so grateful that she is with us on tonight. This is Dr. Tiffany Monique Lloyd. She is a native of Faraday, Louisiana. She is a political science American singer, radio host, and director. She's an academician, and she's also a scholar. She's a motivational speaker. She's earned BS degrees in psychology and education from Alcorn State University, where she graduated magna cum laude. She holds a master's degree in public administration, as well as the PhD in public policy from Southern University and A&M College. I am so grateful to have this tremendous woman of God, this tremendous academician, and we're excited for her contribution on tonight. Let's receive Dr. Tiffany Lloyd.
Hi, Bishop.
Hey, Tiff, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you? I'm excited about the show.
Oh, Tiffany, it's going to be marvelous. I just cannot wait to hear your insightful contribution about Juneteenth, because you know you can say it. You can say it.
I cannot wait to give it to you all. Hi, Dr. Harris.
Hello.
My next panelist is a very, very good friend of mine. In fact, he was responsible for putting together, along with myself, Bishop Greg Davis, Bishop Edgar Van, something called Voices of the Black Church. He is a tremendous leader. We all know him as Dixon, but this is the Bishop Dr. James Dixon, who is the pastor of the Community of Faith Church. Oh my God, his list of accomplishments are so great. In fact, he has a 22.6 acre land where he has constructed a $6.5 million worship and ministry center. It is affectionately known as the King's Dome. Of course, he has his doctorate in ministry from Virginia University in Lynchburg, and we are just excited about what my friend and my brother is coming to deposit and contribute to this conversation on tonight. Can we receive the Honorable Bishop James Dixon?
Good evening, Dr. Page.
Hey, Dick, what's going on, man?
Man, all is well. I'm just so glad to be connected to anything that you're doing. And you've got these scholars. You got Dr. Tiffany Lloyd, Dr. James Harris. I might ought to just check out.
How you doing, Dixon?
Listen,
Great, good to see you, Dr. Harris.
listen.
Yes,
I got somebody else I got coming. I got somebody else coming, Lord, and I'm so excited. I'm excited about her. And I don't know. I'm gonna have Tiffany on one hand, and I'm gonna have her on the other hand. I'm gonna need Dr. Harris and Dr. Dixon to help me with these two, and maybe my last panelist, he have to pray us through to the end of the show. But this is another tremendous woman of God. Her name is Miss Teslyn Figueroa. Teslyn is a political consultant with high-profile crisis management experience, federal, state campaign experience, public relations and media training experience, with over 20 years of achievement in strategic communications and media relations, coupled with political campaign wins at every level of government. Teslyn is considered a master political strategist. In 2018, Teslyn partnered with Cut 50, an organization founded by CNN host Van Jones. Her role assisted with booking Cut 50 national organizers on various national and regional media platforms to advocate on behalf of the historic First Step Act. In addition to her media expertise efforts, Teslyn also personally utilized her voice by providing commentary on national platforms to urge legislators to pass the historic First Step Act prison reform legislation, which in turn was passed December 2018. We are excited to hear from the vivacious, energetic, how can I put it? Turbulent voice of combativeness, Teslyn Figueroa. Come on, Teslyn, come on in the sanctuary with us.
Good evening, everybody. I like that voice of combativeness. I think I'm gonna take that with me. I like that. So glad to be here, and blessings to everyone, and excited to join the panel this evening.
Thank you so much, Taz. Well, our last panelist, now you all know Dr. Walker is always a part of every panel that we do, and he's going to be floating in and out because this is Dr. Walker's kind of panel. This is Dr. Allen Walker. In fact, flash Dr. Walker on the screen real quick so he can wave at everybody. Put him on the screen real quick. There we go. Dr. Walker, Dr. Walker, Dr. Walker.
God bless everybody. God bless everybody. I'm looking forward to a wonderful night of combated conversation.
Thank you so much, Dr. Walker. Our last panelist is a great man of God, and he also is from Houston, Texas, by way of Springfield, Massachusetts, and he is the Honorable Bishop C. Sterling Davis. Bishop Davis is a preacher, speaker, mentor, and lecturer that is well known for his critical thinking, passionate yet prolific oratorical style, his humor, but above all else, he is a servant at heart. The combination of the above stated and his God-given anointing to preach and teach from a practical theological platform has strengthened and encouraged the faith of countless hearers across the globe. Bishop Davis humbly served as the senior pastor of the Renaissance Church of Houston. In July 2014, he was duly consecrated to the office of the bishop during the 26th annual Holy Convocation of the United Covenant Churches Christ under the hand of his presiding Bishop Eric Daniel Garnes. He currently serves as the diocesan for the great state of Texas and sits on the general board serving as Secretary General. He's married to the lovely Beulah Davis. They have 4 lovely children, which are my nieces and my nephew. So we're grateful tonight to have the Honorable Bishop C. Sterling Davis. Come on, Davis.
Hey, Bishop. Good to see you, sir.
It's good to see you. You sound like a man of God tonight. You sound like a man of God. Lift your voice up. Lift your voice up.
Apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. Looking forward to this conversation.
Well, listen, I had an opening monologue prepared, and my opening monologue was going to explain that Juneteenth is the oldest national celebrated commemoration of the ending of slavery in the United States. But I thought it would probably be better presented by Dr. Tiffany Lloyd. So I'm going to ask Dr. Tiffany Lloyd to explain to the viewers and everyone watching us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, all these digital platforms, explain to us tonight, what is Juneteenth?
Okay. Well, I'm going to start off being a tropical storm, and I'll let Teslin come in and be a Category 5 hurricane, right? So, first of all, slavery started in 1619, and what happened was that on January 1st, 1863, President Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation to free the slaves. Unfortunately, the slaves in Texas were not free, and so it was on that day, on June 19th, 1865, where General Gordon Granger delivered the news in Galveston, Texas, that the slaves were free. Now, I want everybody to be clear. I don't believe that Juneteenth is about celebrating Black people's freedom. We're free-ish, but we're not really free. So that's to answer your question of why we are celebrating Juneteenth.
Wow. Okay. Now, since she's explained Juneteenth, I want to put context in terms of it being for us as believers from a biblical perspective. I just want to put context to it from a Christian perspective, all right? From an historical perspective for African-American people, we see it as a celebrated day 2.5 years after the Emancipation Proclamation was signed. Now, in biblical context, I want us to look at the book of Philemon, okay? Philemon is one of Paul's magnum opus writings. It's a prison epistle. It's not a pastoral epistle, it's a prison epistle, because some scholars say we know he was in prison. We don't know if he's under house arrest in Rome, but we do know he's in prison. All right. Now, we also know, based on what scholars have deduced, that Paul is writing this to Philemon true convert in the gospel. He's been changed by the ministry of Paul. He's a believer, but this believer, Philemon, is also a slave owner. I said it again. He's a believer, but he's a slave owner. Now, I don't have time to get into it. I'm going to leave that for Dr. Harris. I'm going to leave that for Dr. Dixon. I'm going to leave that for Bishop Davis to deal with the chattel slavery concept, because biblically, when the Roman Empire looked at a slave, they did not look at a slave through the lenses of ethnicity. They looked at a slave through conquering a nation, and the nation that they would conquer would go into slavery. Not all, but some. All right. So here you have Paul writing in a Greco-Roman world to Philemon, who is a son in ministry or a partner in ministry, who is affected by Paul's teaching and preaching, being sent this letter on behalf of a so-called slave that Philemon owned, named Onesimus. Onesimus is the slave, Philemon is the slave master, and Paul would be considered the father in ministry, the authority in protocol in ministry. And it is Paul that sends this letter to Philemon saying, I need you to receive Onesimus back, but I want you to receive him as an equal. Don't look at him as a slave anymore. Look at him as a brother. Just look at him as a companion. Then he says this, if he owes you anything, at all, if you've taken a loss because of the relationship, he says, put it on my account, charge it to me, but receive him back. Please receive him back. Please receive him back. Please receive him back. Now, some scholars say Paul was a little jaded, because why didn't Paul just say, I don't want you to have Onesimus anymore as a slave? Abolish slavery. Because Paul does not abolish slavery. Paul doesn't say he's an abolitionist of slavery. He just makes a request. He says, if you would, could you just receive him back, if you would, as a brother, not as a slave. Now, with that being said, here's my parallel. Here's what I like to juxtapose. The Emancipation Proclamation was supposed to free us, okay? It freed all of the states in the Union except for one, the state of Texas. 2.5 years later, now the state of Texas is free. Now, with all this freedom we throwing out here, do we see real freedom today for the African American man, woman? Do we still see freedom for Black and brown bodies today? Are we really free? Now, see, Tiff ready to jump on me already. Hold on, Tiff. I can see blood in Teslin's eye right now, but y'all hold on. I'm gonna start first with Dr. Dixon, and then I want Dr. Harris to take it, and then I want Teslin to take it, and then I want Davis, you to take it, and then Tiff gonna say something. But Dixon, are we really free for real?
Well, Dr. Page, again, thank you for having us on. I appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this stellar panel of intellectuals and academics and spiritual-minded individuals, theologians, if you will. Let me just say that I'm wearing a shirt right now. You can't see it, but it says, "Let my people go now." For 400 years, blacks in America have been saying we can't breathe.
Mm.
We can't breathe from the bottom of slave ships. We can't breathe through over 250 years of chattel slavery. We can't breathe. And we can't breathe. In 1863, Emancipation Proclamation is signed. That was to give us the first chance to breathe. But then immediately thereafter, immediate Reconstruction, and then Jim Crow laws kicked back in. And so we can't breathe again. And so all through Jim Crow, we can't breathe. Through segregation, we can't breathe. And we can't breathe now. Mass incarceration, we can't breathe now. Inequitable education, we can't breathe now. A web gap that continues to widen, we can't breathe now. And 50 plus years after the Fair Housing Act is signed, we still own the same number of houses today as we did when the Fair Housing Act was signed in 1955. So we can't breathe is still our mantra. And the image of Officer Chauvin on the neck, with his knee on the neck of George Floyd, is a ridiculous, horrific image, but it paints a larger picture. It's the image of white oppression on the necks of Black America for 400 years. So when you ask, are we really free now? My answer is, we're still saying, let my people go. And in 2020, I'm from the state of Texas. The Reverend Al Edwards, who campaigned for 20 plus years, it took him 25 years lobbying in the state legislature to get the Juneteenth bill signed. It did not come easy for that to happen. And just today, of course, as a result of the George Floyd death, federal legislation is being presented to make Juneteenth finally a federal holiday. Finally, it would become a federal holiday. And it took George Floyd's death with a knee on his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds to make that happen. So we are still in a state where we're not completely free. And we have to understand that, as I mentioned, mass incarceration enacted with the 13th Amendment that was signed in 1865 continued slavery, because that bill in effect said, the 13th Amendment said, that free labor is not legal except for when someone is incarcerated. And so after Emancipation 1863, you have the 13th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution that really made slavery legal again, which is why mass incarceration of blacks and browns have been the industry that symbolizes slavery all over again. And to this day, $10 billion plus a year are generated for for-profit American companies on the backs of free prison labor. Are we free? I would think the reality, the stats tell us, the data tells us, we are still trying to become free.
Wow. Dr. James Harris?
Yes, Dr. Page, honored to be able to be here tonight and to share with you and all of this. I ditto all of what Bishop Dixon said. Just to add that following that 13th Amendment was the 14th Amendment, which took place in 1868, which stated that pretty much all persons born or naturalized in the United States, should be free. But I think we all recognize that freedom has escaped, in many senses, African Americans. There's been a constant struggle for freedom in a very real sense, from the early days, epitomized by somebody like Nat Turner and his insurrection in County, Virginia in 1831. But still, from that point on, and even before, the struggle for freedom continues. And then being a native of Virginia and, pretty much subject to the Jeffersonian history that we have in Virginia, with Jefferson, being not only the governor of Virginia, but also going on to become the president of the United States, and him being a slave owner and not just a slave owner, but a slave trader.
Mm.
And so the nature of American democracy is embedded not only in the Constitution, but embedded in the lives of people in America throughout, throughout Virginia. As a matter of fact, all of the many of the first presidents of the United States, including Thomas Jefferson, as I said, were slave owners and slave traders as well. Which, you know, I mean, and so I've argued on many other occasions that it's the slave trading that that's the chattel part that we're talking about, the chattel slavery, and black people as property, and black people as less than human. There was a 3/5 clause in the Constitution that said that people had no rights, that white people were deemed to respect. And I think that continues to a large degree, even today. And so I also argue and suggest that there has been a straight line from slavery to the present day. That struggle for freedom is pretty much a straight line from 1619, if we will start there, all the way up to 2020. It's about 401 years. There's been this constant struggle for freedom, mainly because whites have had historically no respect for black people, and slavery, was an institution of the state, and the slave master was a sovereign, just like a state, and there was no recourse to any action that the slave master took. I mean, you could not appeal a decision of the slave master, which the slave master could hang you or castrate you, whatever the slave master decided. There was no recourse, no appeal, nothing like that. And black people worked for all of these years without wages. I mean, it's free labor, and as everybody on this panel knows, it's that kind of free labor that built America, and so forth. And today we have a lot of discussion about and resistance to reparations and blah blah blah. I've argued for years that African Americans need to not only be given reparations, but should be able to attend any state university and other kinds of things without having to pay tuition or anything else in connection with it. And in addition to a whole lot of other things. I mean, reparations were paid to the Jews, even after the Holocaust. And but when it comes to African Americans, everybody is pretty much against it. There can be nothing done. But so I say to people all the time, it's a miracle that we as African Americans have our sanity. I mean, that is a miracle. And the fact that we're able to survive in the midst of this horrific trauma and suffering for all of these years. And I think that's a critical kind of thing as well. And I think it's something that we should teach our people to never forget. Paige, as a fact, I mean, even at Virginia Union, from time to time, I have students who have said, they didn't want to hear about black suffering. They don't want to hear no more about slavery and this and that and so forth, which is a shame. I think it's criminal if we don't talk about slavery, if we don't talk about our own history, and if we don't learn something about our own history as well. And so the fact that this whole notion about Juneteenth has ended up in the public square and ended up where people who actually didn't even know how to pronounce Juneteenth 5 days ago, are now talking about it around the country and around the world. Black people have been talking about it and struggling connection with it for years or so. So all of these things. But I do think that it took a lot of blood, sweat, and tears for it to manifest itself. Even now, with the death of George Floyd and all of the other deaths that we have seen, police shooting African Americans in the back, shooting African Americans like Breonna Taylor in the bed, just complete disregard for Black life. And it's a real fact. And I think it's a great thing that people are marching in the streets. In a sense, I think this is just the beginning of African American kind of disgust with the way we've been treated in America. And so I think that the marches and the protests in the street are just beginning. And I'm doing everything I can to encourage the protesters, young, old, and like, to do everything they can to just keep marching and keep the pressure on, because white people don't understand anything that is not related to economics, and it's not related to money, not related to finance, and that's not related to violence. As a matter of fact, the country was founded on violence. And when they talk about blacks being violent, blacks are not violent people, in my view. African Americans, as a rule, are loving, kind people. And, I have said, quoting Frantz Fanon, that Black people love white people. Now, some of my students get very tensed up when I make that kind of statement. It's not my statement, it's from Fanon, White Mass. And he also goes on to say in the same paragraph that white people struggle with humor. And I think Black people can attest to that, surely, because we have been treated in an inhuman way by white since we left.
Dr. Harris, so would you say, so what you're saying is we're not free at all? We're really not free?
Oh, absolutely not. No.
Okay. Taz, what you say?
We're still struggling.
What you say, Taz?
Well, let me take a breath. There's so many things I want to say. I've been listening to everyone. One of the things that I didn't mention in my bio is I am a consultant for Attorney Benjamin Crump, who is the attorney that represents the George Floyd family. I've worked with Attorney Benjamin Crump on most of his high-profile cases. I was with the George Floyd family for the last 10 plus days as we went through burying George Floyd in those 3 different states. Shout out to Bishop Dixon, who was also at the funeral as well here in Houston, Texas. And let me just say this, and I've heard what Mr. Harris has said, and also what Bishop Dixon has said, and 2020 is the year that we see things for what it is. 2020 is about discernment. It is about crystal clear vision. It is about seeing things clear. So one of the things that I do on my show, which is called Straight Shot, No Chaser, I don't dance around issues, and I don't, it is not my job to make people feel comfortable. The reality of it is, when Bishop Dixon said that it took the death of George Floyd to wake folks up for the same begging and singing and crying and praying that we've been doing year over year over year, let me explain to you why the death of George Floyd woke folks up. I know that Mr. Harris said that Black people are not violent. And my thing with this is, from this generation, my generation has no problem letting you know that sometime we gonna meet you there before we beat you there. We have no problem saying that sometimes we're gonna do a little bit more swinging and less singing. This generation has no problem saying that if you only understand violence, then we're going to speak the language that you only understand. One thing about America, and when you made the comment about that they only understand economics, they only understand money, this is true. This is why when we came over to this country, we were deemed as property. Not even our Black bodies mattered. We were property. This is why we are celebrating Juneteenth right now. So when I'm not advocating violence, but what I'm saying is that once we decided to get up off our knees and stand on our feet and start tearing up some of these folks' property. Now, I'm not here to, Bishop still is praying for me. I always tell people, Bishop keeps me in prayer. But one thing that I've noticed that's different about this protest, different than the last protest, is when you start going up in Target, when you start going up in Walmart, when you start going against a capitalist society and starting to say that, oh no, this time, if we die, you die. This time, if we burn, you burn. All of a sudden, you have seen seeing executive orders all around this country. New York signed an executive order to say, oh no, we don't want to lose our funding. So right now we are banned in chokeholds. We've been begging for them to give Eric Garner justice for the last 5 years. Houston has signed an executive order. Colorado just today signed an executive order. States all around this country have made a move because of the fear of the property damage. One thing we know about property is it is the most valued thing in America. And I'm not advocating violence, but what I say is the time for singing is over with. I appreciate and pay homage to all of the ancestors that were the revolutionaries, all of the ancestors that said, we are not going to just take this line down. And so what you're seeing in 2020 is you're seeing a generation that has realized that the singing and the praying and the marching is not the move. It kind of saddened me, to be honest with you. I know we spent a lot of time saying, you know, well, it wasn't us. It wasn't black folks. It was white folks. It wasn't us. What does it matter if they think that we're violent or not? They already deem us as violent. This is the reason why they're shooting us in our back, because they see you and I as violent. So we will never change the mind of the oppressor of how they feel about us and how they see us. They see us how they see us. That's why our sister made the movie When They See Us. The question is, do we know how to fight? Do we know how to stand? Are we willing to die? Are we willing to be about the business for the business of the people? So I struggle with Juneteenth, and I'm going to close. But I struggle with Juneteenth because I have a hard time, Bishop, celebrating that it took us 2 years to get here. I have a hard time celebrating that my cousins went on and didn't turn around for 2 more years. I have a hard time really processing why are we eating chicken and grits and on water slides and watermelon. With every Juneteenth, we should have a revolution. We should be organizing. We should be strategizing. We should be planning. I have a hard time celebrating the fact that we were behind, because the reason why we're having this panel, the reason why you have to ask, are we still free? Just the fact that you got to ask the question is the answer. The answer means no, because we shouldn't have to ask this question. There is an issue when we are still behind, still in the old way of thinking of what was before us and not moving forward. I'm sorry, I'm from the Joshua generation. I'm going over to the promised land. There'll be no waiting. There'll be no Moses waiting on 40 years for you to get it. Either you're going over, Bishop Page, or we're going to leave you on this side of the promised land. We have got to get to a mind state to say that either you're for us or against us. Either you're moving forward or you're not. Either you're getting on the ship or you're getting off. Trying to beg and get folks and do this and do that. It's over with. People are frustrated. They've had it up to here. And it took the white folks, to be honest with you, the white supremacists, the anarchists, whoever, that finally decided to say, you know what? If you shoot us at Wendy's, we're going to burn Wendy's down. Now, again, I'm not advocating for violence, but what I'm saying is Wendy's is going to be all right. They got insurance policy. I get tired of us taking the passive position and being so concerned about what they feel about us and so concerned about, we know we don't want to hurt nobody. We real good folks. Oh, no, we got some cousins from the hood from the 90s that's going to be about that business. If you want to bring it to us, we're going to give it to you how you give it to us. And that's what this generation is about. And so this is why we're seeing a change in policy and legislation because of the way we're organizing. And you notice that not one leader was able to silence this generation. Not any ministers, not any legislators, not any elected officials. Nobody was able to bring calm. It is a wildfire. You know why? Because we don't have one central leader anymore. This generation is moving according to responding to the same energy that America gives us. And this is why now America is finally deciding to get their stuff together. I won't use cuss words because I'm among the bishops. But if I was by myself, I would have different words. But that's my thought on Juneteenth.
Bishop Davis, Lord have mercy. I like that. Bishop Davis, what you got to say?
I'll go back and I'll echo all three sentiments. Bishop Dixon, of course, spoke eloquently. And again, Bishop Page, thank you for having us. And everybody on this panel, I'm literally honored to be with you all. The historicity behind what Bishop Dixon has given us, and also Dr. Harris, along with, I would say, the ferocity of Lady Figueroa, was amazing. I think there are a couple of things that we have to consider. Again, to ask the question means that we already know the answer. It's a no. It's a stark no. And there's a couple of reasons why I think that we can also pan into that. which also speaks, I think it was Bishop Dixon who brought it up, and I believe that Dr. Harris brought up as well. When we talk about that 14th Amendment that came out, part of that 14th Amendment argument also leads us to what we consider now the school to prison pipeline, which is another piece about us not being free. Because now if you look at it as a former dean of students, one of the things that we had to look at is that they were looking at children from the 8th grade based on these quote unquote standardized testings. Now we know standardized testing is not geared for us at all, not geared for us at all. And so when we look at the standardized testing, what they were doing is, and this is a fact, they were looking at every child that literally scored below average on those 8th grade testings. What they would do is that's how many beds they would make in the prison institutions. So if I had 500 kids who flunked this test, automatically those results said we got to get 500 beds ready. And those 500 beds were not geared for those individuals who were in quote unquote in white schools. They were actually geared for urban children. All right. And again, working from a charter school perspective. So we knew that this was happening. Then if you go on and you look at it, going back to Dr. Harris, so that means that they were already gearing for free labor from the 8th grade. One more time, they were already gearing for their free labor from the 8th grade. So when we look at that school to prison pipeline, we look at how, going back to, I think it was Bishop Dixon who brought it up, we go back and look at 401 years of them having our knee on their neck, sociologically and also psychologically. We got to look at, we're also looking at babies, young people who are watching their fathers and mothers die. So if you're looking at a father and a mother die, guess what that child is left to be thinking? That child's going to be left angry. That child's going to be left, in a state of being destitute. And what are they going to do? 9 times out of 10, it's going to come out in the behavior, whether it comes out that they're not going to school, whatever the case may be. And so now they're killing, they are killing Black men and women. Guess what? Setting up another generation who don't have parents, who don't have fathers, who don't have mothers. And then their recourse is, guess what? We got another generation that we can start locking up now because we actually give them some level of trauma that they can't deal with, let alone be supported in. So when we talk about this whole issue of being free, no, we ain't been free for a good minute. And to Teslin's point, which I will say, I echo you, Tez, because at the end of the day, I believe, especially for Black church, I think it's antithetical for us right now to sit back and talk about being peaceful or having some level of, y'all got to be calm. Jesus was a peacemaker. No, that's not what the text tells me. Jesus was the biggest agitator in the history of agitation. He spent 3 years going against the system hard. And when people talk about what Jesus was, the Prince of Peace, well, go back and read your Bible. It's a really good book. It'll bless you if you read it. He comes back and he starts his peaceful protest by flipping over a table. He does that. But then when they did not listen to him, when he came back over, he became this individual. The text says that he fashions a whip. He sits over in the corner and he fashions a whip. So which means he had to step his game up when you didn't listen to us the first time. So here we are at the second time. When you didn't listen to our Martin, now you're going to feel our Malcolm. So that's where we are at this particular point. And I think for us to sit back and act like that this level of violence is against the movement, no. And I close by saying this. I said this to Bishop Page the other night, and I know his faces. His faces are you got to hang out with him enough. But I could see his face when I said this. The thought process is this, is that if a battery is dead in your car, you have 2 wires that you can use. You have a red wire, which is the positive wire, and a black wire, which is the negative wire. If you just hook up the red wire to your battery, the positive wire, you'll get no power at all. If you just hook up the black wire, which is a negative wire, you won't get any power at all. But if you hook up both, that's when you get power to your battery. So it's not only do we just need the protest, we also need, believe it or not, folk that are going to do exactly what Taz said. Folk that are looking to burn this whole thing up. Now, I know that I'm not advocating violence. What I'm saying is that on a strategic level, we need both. We don't need either or. It's both and. Nat Turner, who again will speak to that. Bishop Dr. Harris will speak to that. But you need individuals who will, and I'm going to say this, and I know people get agitated, so let me say this real quick. Because the Black church is the only place where we believe in reciprocity when it comes to money, not behavior.
Mm-hmm.
One more time. This is the only place I know where we talk about seed time and harvest and it's money. Or we talk about, you'll go, and if we look at the text, it says, give, it'll be given back to you in good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. And it says, will men give to your bosom? But the above text, that's not about money, that's about behavior. So in other words, you kill us, we gonna get you in good measure, pressed down, shaken together, or we gonna tear some of your stuff up, especially when this country has literally been built on violence and radical violence at that time.
All right, well,
Man.
okay. Well, now let me say this. Y'all know that I'm not gonna advocate killing a bunch of white people up. You know I'm not gonna do that. But this is what I wanna kind of push into. I want to push into this. With everything that's been done, where do we go from here? What do we do with this moment? What are we gonna do? Because this is a prime moment. And is it possible that all of what we see, smoke screens and mirrors and all that they say that we are, that we know that we're not? How do we, where's the leaders at? Where's the solution? And I'm gonna go back to something Taz said, and I really want to hear Dixon and Tiffany's concept of this. I'm serious. Where the leaders at? Where? Because Teslin says something powerful. She said there is no defined leader. Now, back when I was growing up, I'm 58. Okay, the two major figures at that time, and they were polarizing, was Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. We knew that those were our African American leaders. One was one extreme, one may have been to the other extreme, but we knew unequivocally that they were our leaders. And we that are Judeo-Christians, we gravitated to Martin Luther King Jr. because this is a preacher. He represents our theological construct. So we're going to embrace that. Malcolm X. Now, personally, a Negro from the street like me, I love Malcolm X. I like shooting. I like cutting. All that. Strangling. I like all that. That I can do that all day long. That would be my construct. But because of being a Christian, a believer, MLK felt closer to my concept. But today, where are the leaders at? Where are the leaders? Do we have a bunch of media whores, and all they want is to be seen in the public eye, behind the camera, but they're really not about change? Where are the leaders at? Tiff, you can take it, then I'm gonna fix it.
Let me answer your original question about are we free? So I can go with that. The answer is no. I mean, this was a nation that was designed for Black people to fail. And I mean, even before 1863, let's go back to 1857, Dred Scott versus Sanford. Dred Scott was a slave. Sanford was the slave owner. They were living in the show me state of Missouri, where it was a slave territory. And then Sanford decided that he wanted to go and move to Wisconsin, which was a non-slave territory area. So Rightfully so. What did Dred Scott do? He sued for his freedom. But a racist person on the U.S. Supreme Court justice by the name of Roger Taney said this. He said, number one, once a slave, always a slave. Number two, he said that Black people were inferior beings. Three, he said that when they wrote the Declaration of Independence, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. They were talking about white men only. They were not talking about Black people. Number four, slaves were not viewed as people, but as property. And five, no slave shall sue his slave owner. Now, we talked about the 3-5 compromise. Also, remember this about the 3-5 compromise. People own slaves not because just to own slaves, but they own slaves because they were additional votes. For every 5 slaves, you had 3 additional votes. So then we go back to the 13th Amendment. We free the slaves. The 14th Amendment, citizenship. The 15th Amendment, then we give them the right to vote. But then we pause right there for a minute and they say, okay, Negroes, you want to be free. You don't want to be a slave anymore. We give you that. But then we're going to put something in there called the poll tax. Poll tax is you got to pay a fee in order to vote. Then if you don't have that, okay, Negro, you don't have the poll tax. And let's be clear, slaves were not paid for this. So how were they going to afford to be able to vote? Then we have the literacy test. Now, most slaves could not even read or write, didn't even know their name. So then they said, okay, you don't have the money for the poll tax. You don't have the literacy test. Then we have something called the grandfather clause. The grandfather clause says that if you can prove that your grandfather voted before Reconstruction, you can vote. How in the world am I going to be able to prove that? So this has always been a nation that has been designed for Black people to fail, from Plessy versus Ferguson, Brown versus Board of Education, Jim Crow, even now. Here we have Jamard Arbery, who can't even jog in peace. We have Breonna Taylor, who can't even sleep in peace. We have George Floyd, who can't even go to the store and purchase an item and go in peace. So the answer is absolutely 100% emphatically no. You asked the question about leadership. Let's start at the top. No, we don't have a leader. We have a clown, but we don't have a leader. So there is no way possible that we should be okay with the work that President Trump has done in response to this. A man that has said, when the looting starts, the shooting starts, is that a leader? A man who just said hours ago, who tweeted and threatened the people in Tulsa, Oklahoma, when he goes there on tomorrow and says that we're not going to be as nice as the people were to you in Minneapolis. A man that has done nothing but divided America. No, leadership starts up top. A man who does not take accountability for anything that he does, but puts the blame on everyone else. It's amazing to me that he could not even send out a tweet about George Floyd and talked about police brutality. But you were very quick to talk about when the looting starts, the shooting starts. Go ahead.
Hold on, Tez. Hold on, Tez. I know you're ready. I can feel it. I can feel it in my bones. Dixon, where's the leadership? Now, when I talk about leadership, I'm not talking about number 45. I'm taking him off the table. Where are our Black leaders? Where are Black and brown leaders? Where are they at? Where are the examples of leadership? Because this is what I believe, and you all can chime in. Dick, you start, of course. I believe crisis causes real leadership to emerge. Real leadership emerges out of a crisis when there is unprecedented global pandemic, racial pandemic, when we've got, oh my God, microaggressions fueled by ignorance and anger and racism. Where are the leaders? Why isn't somebody emerging, definitively emerging amongst our people? Dixon.
Well, let me say thank you for that question. You asked 2 questions too, Dr. Page, and I want to try to couch both, because I know when Taz gets the mic, it's going to be shut down in just a minute. But let me say very seriously, to your first question, what do we do with this moment? And I think that's a question we do not want to miss, because God works in moments. and transformation happens in a moment. You have to recognize, the crossing of the Red Sea was a moment. Moving into the promised land, that was a moment. And resurrection is a moment. And we've got to be mindful of the moment and not simply emotional. I think many people are emotional but not mindful. And this is my concern now, is that we see so much emotion. People are emotional, but not as many people as necessary are mindful. So that's a pivotal question that you raised. One, I think in this moment we must educate. We must educate. There are people reacting to the contemporary context, but they're not educated. We do know that our own story has not been a part of our curriculum. Even Blacks don't know Black history. We have to educate, and not just and educate ourselves, and then we have to educate others. There are people listening right now who would have never listened before, and we cannot tune that out. We cannot tune that out. There are people listening, and because now their ears are perched, we must be educating and not simply reacting. So we've got to be very careful not to miss the moment to educate America. For those who are willing to listen, for those who are willing to learn, we must be prepared to educate them. Yeah. And not agitation is wonderful. It's very necessary. I'm with Taz on that. I was going to mention Nat Turner. It's amazing that Nat Turner led a rebellion against slavery, but he's not called a patriot. You see, because we define, in American history, Nat Turner led a rebellion, and he's a thug, right? Because he had people killed. But from the American side, it says we were founded on violence, but those are called, Patrick Henry is a patriot for killing people. Nat Turner is a criminal for killing white people who were operating slavery. So I think that when you rebel against a broken system, if you happen to have to get violent, then why aren't you looked at as a patriot? Because you're rebelling against a system, right, that's killing people. So that's a whole other language. But my point is, we do have to educate very carefully, educate very thoroughly. Then secondly, we have to participate. And not participate in the marches. I do that. Participate in the protests. We do that. But then you got to participate in process. You got to participate in process. That's very, very important. And right now, we should have massive voter registration to be going on. We should turn all the energy from the protest into massive education and that massive registration. We have to do that because that's a part of the process. So participation is huge. And it's amazing how many people can shout against something from the grandstand, but they don't come down to the field where the real game is played. We've got to get as many people out of the stand shouting onto the field, to the battleground where the real progress can happen. So we got to educate and then participate. And then we have to legislate. There must be legislative agendas. And I applaud those organizations around the nation, the NAACP, Urban League, others who are forming legislation, people, leaders of Black Lives Matter, working on a legislative agenda, because we've got to have a legislative agenda to put before candidates to say, do you support independent review boards with subpoena power? Do you support outlawing chokeholds and other forms of violence used by police? Do you support? And you got to have an agenda. Now you change legislation. Policy governs practice. It doesn't change hearts, but it changes behavior. So we have to legislate. So educate, participate, and legislate. And then not only legislate, now we liberate. Even Black people, let's be clear, all of us have not been reaching back to lift up Black people who are down. Many of us have moved away from our own cousins, nieces, and nephews, and we don't reach back into the communities where our own people are suffering. We've got to return to the mission of liberating the oppressed ourselves. We talk about mass incarceration, but how many of us have prison ministries? How many pastors do you see going behind prison bars? How many of us are doing what it takes to liberate the oppressed? where poverty exists. Most of us don't dwell there because we have cruise ships, not battleships. And most of our churches are led by celebrities, not soldiers and servants. We've got to revert our mentality. So when you've got a cruise ship ministry, you're looking to get away from danger and away from problems. And the only person who gets rich is the one who owns the boat. But when it's a battleship, battleships are built for trouble, built for crisis, built for challenge. And the leader of the battleship deliberately takes the crew into where the crisis is because you know you are made for this. We were made for this moment. And today, when you say the leadership, and that's why I'm getting that question, we need battleship leadership now. And our problem is we've been so celebrity struck over the last 35 years. We have made celebrities our models as opposed to servants and soldiers. And so we follow celebrity and we make celebrities of people because they got a crowd, because they have a stage, because they have charisma. But celebrities would never deliver you. Only battle-proven servants would deliver. Only soldiers would deliver. And by the way, God always uses the prophetic. There's never been a movement where God delivered people without a prophet. Never. Search the history, in contemporary history and biblical history. Whenever God delivers a people, there is a prophet. And prophets are not pretty. Prophets are not cute. Prophets have battle scars. So if you want to look for a leader to follow, look for the leader with the scars because the scars tell the story. Why do we follow Jesus? Because he got nail prints in his hands and nail prints in his feet. So don't tell me you're a leader with no scars. Don't tell me you're a leader and you're a celebrity and not a servant and a soldier. So our problem is we're waiting for a celebrity figure to lead us as opposed to a serving soldier to lead us. And then for this crew that says you don't need a leader, then cut off your head because everybody has to have a head. If you don't have a head, the body cannot function. Leadership is a fundamental principle to movement and to mobility. Every car has to have a driver. Every ship has to have a captain. Every pilot has to have a captain. Every family has to have a leader. That does not say that all of us don't speak to it, but God's order cannot be broken. But you got to be willing to say, wherever those leaders are, not a leader, wherever those leaders are, test them, evaluate them by what blood they have in the game. I don't care what they say, what blood do they have in the game? What are they doing when the camera is off? What were they doing before the movement, before this hour? Where were they serving and who were they lifting? And if they don't smell like sheep, they're not a shepherd. So you got to understand leaders are where suffering really is. If you want to find a real leader, look for suffering people and find that person down there with the suffering because that's where you're going to find the real leader that's going to take us to the other side.
Dixon.
Why are you so quiet?
Dixon. What I like about your presentation. Well, listen, I can't say nothing right now because I'm the moderator. I'm directing the traffic. So let me direct the traffic now to Tez in this regard. The question I asked, what do we do at this moment? Where are the leaders? I think Bishop Dixon has articulated that wonderfully. But let me add another caveat to the question then. Why? What is this fixation with people wanting to be seen only when the cameras come out? What is that? Why we can't find grassroots leaders like yourself, grassroots leaders that's doing the work when the cameras are not running, when the cameras are not lights, camera, action? What type of generation in from your perspective are we dealing with as it relates to that, looking for leadership? Because I believe this generation does want proven, authentic leadership. Why can't we find it? Why we can't find leaders like Bishop Dixon just said?
Well, I agree with everything Bishop Dixon said as far as every car needs a driver and you must have leadership. But I'm going to be honest with you and say that this, when you made the comment that you believe that this generation wants leadership, I have to disagree with that a little bit, because this generation is not, although the leadership may be necessary, it may be something that we certainly need. What I'm learning on the ground, because I don't just commentate on TV, I participate. And what I'm learning is this generation is not looking for that one Al Sharpton, that one Jesse Jackson, that one so-and-so, that one bishop. Look at the Black Lives Matter movement. It is uncontained. It is spread like wildfire. There's no one or two or three. You have your leadership at the top, but the reason why it's so effective is because it is like a wildfire. Each chapter manages their own. This is why, and this is respectfully to those that I've worked with in the NAACP and the Urban League, this is why they do not have their hand on the pulse of what this generation is looking for. To be honest with you, I believe that the church has a role, and it may not always be in politics. There are two roles. Somebody needs to pray and somebody needs to spray. I was an M60 gunner in the military. And when it was time to go out on the field, we wasn't praying to change folks' heart. We weren't praying to try to get everybody on the same page. That is necessary. Somebody has to pray for me. But even though we talk about Jesus, let's talk about Deborah in the book of Judges that said, either you're going to deliver my people through poverty, General Barak, his name was Barak, or he's going to deliver it through the hands of a woman. So what I tell people to tell when they say, well, what do we do? And what do we do in this moment? The best answer you can give somebody, it's above you now. It's above you now. The streets, the movement belongs to the streets. And I don't see the streets giving it back anytime soon. Those who want leadership, those who are destined to lead, people will follow. They follow authentic people, but they're just not interested in hearing more of the same over and over and over. And in respect to my sister Tiffany, I do agree. I know you took 45 off the table, but I'm gonna put them back on the table just for a second, because we need to have this conversation. I don't blame 45. And the reason why I don't, because it's real easy to point at President Trump. Mm-hmm. But see, President Trump, this is how politics works in the real world. See, the theory of politics sounds good, but in the real world, it is an exchange of my vote. President Trump didn't ask for your vote. He didn't come to your church. He didn't ask for no bishop to introduce him to nobody. He didn't knock on your door. Who knocked on your door, who came to your church, was your local elected official who was black. See, I don't do black and brown, Bishop Page. I go ahead and say black. I don't do the crayon talk. I do black. The person that came to your door, knocked on your door, was your elected official. Democrats are 90% black. Yet we do not have a black agenda. It's about dealing with the man that's in your house. Who you sleeping with? Don't worry about what President Trump doing, because he actually is a leader to those that raised him as his leader. He's a leader to his base. They have no problem. This is why his poll numbers stay consistently at 40%. They have not budged, and they don't have no plans on budget. He leads them just fine. He said, we're going to build the wall. We're going to build the wall. If I got to sign an executive order, whatever I got to do to make it happen for my base, I'm going to do it. I wish we had a gangster like that on our side of the aisle. The bottom line is Trump don't owe us nothing. What about our mayors? What about our city elected officials? What about our city council? We never challenge them. We're quick to go up top and talk about sister girl's man around the corner. But what did your man do last night? Did he come home last night? Where is his accountability? We never want to hold each other accountable. And that is why this generation is not interested and hearing more of the kumbaya and how we get along. I do believe there's a place for a church. And I follow Bishop Dixon's leadership. He's one of the few bishops, ministers that I actually can say is out here in these streets. But when it comes to what this generation is looking for, no, they don't want no leadership. See, they done seen and heard it all from the leadership. They've decided that we're going to go ahead and do a different route. And we're going to like we said, let the prophets emerge. Let the leadership emerge. And either you're with it or you're not. It's just that simple. We don't have to worry about trying to figure out what to do with this moment, because the streets going to take care of it. Don't worry about it. Just sit back like the old folks say, by and by. The streets got it. They're going to take it from here. Don't worry about it. We ain't got to figure it out in this particular panel. Just keep on watching. Let them keep on shooting us down in these streets. And you're going to begin to see, like Farrakhan said, a revolt on this country, giving them the same energy that they got us. See, I know we like to do this disclaimer to say I'm not advocating violence. I'm not advocating violence. But what if I was advocating violence? What is it that you possibly could do to me? What if I am telling you by any means necessary? What if I am saying that if you come in my house and you shoot at me, that I got the right to shoot back to you? Rest in peace, Breonna Taylor. What if I do say that I can carry my gun, and if I'm a Ahmaud Arbery, that I get pulled over and I got the right to shoot you back? We have to get out of the idea of always pacifying our oppressors. And I know we don't feel that we're doing that, but I just feel that we do when we're busy trying to convince them when we've already seen the history. Somebody said we need to educate. Well, we've been reading books and getting understanding, but the question is, what are we going to do about it, though? This generation will know, what are we going to do about it? It's time to be about it and not just talk about it. They don't want to read the books. They don't want to read the history. They know what they know. They don't have to go back and read what happened 200-300 years ago. They saw it last week when Rashad Brooks got shot down.
Wow.
They saw it. So what history are we talking about? We're living in real time now. This generation is about making history. And the history is that if you keep on coming over here in these streets, we're going to start burning something down. That's just the bottom line. And let the bishops pray for us. Pray for our sinning selves and make sure you give us good services and keep us in your prayers. But it's above us now. The streets are done talking, and they're about that action. And I do think the leadership is important. I do think that we need to have, I'm a Christian woman too. But when it comes to politics and talking to these politicians, I'm not moving in the spirit of my forgiveness. I'm moving in the Old Testament, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. So you can understand what it is. Like my mama in the store. You clown in the store, you're going to get your ass whooped in the store. That's how that goes. We ain't going home. We're going to go home and figure it out and talk of that. You're going to get dealt with right here and right now. So that's what we're on. As far as those that at least follow me and people that are going into a different direction on what they're looking for in leadership.
Dr. Harris? Dr. Harris?
Yeah, I just want to say that I agree that I mean there's a whole new field to this movement, and I don't think that there is going to emerge any singular leader per se. And in many ways, I think that's a good thing because you know, one of the problems with the civil rights movement was it had the so-called leader, which was in Martin Luther King, and when he was assassinated, the movement sort of floundered to a large degree. And I think now, and I think it's a good thing that because you know that white people cannot identify any particular leader that they can assassinate, because the leadership is so varied, and the leadership is you know, it's not centralized as pretty much everybody has said. I just think that I think that in many ways that's a good thing, that the leaders are rising up, you know, from the bottom and from the masses, and you know, so and I'm not even sure we need again any top-down leadership per se, that that we need any particular one person to be identified as the leader, because I mean theoretically and practically, you know, that's too much of a target that can be placed on one person, and oftentimes once that mentality has solidified that we have one leader, you take that leader out, and the movement often falls apart. So I think the good thing about this particular is that nobody can identify exactly one particular person or two particular people or three or four people necessarily, but there are just lots of people, and I'm not even sure that I mean, I think that's appropriate for this time. Now, it may have been appropriate during the early days civil rights movement for King and Malcolm and others to be leaders, but today, you know, I mean, during that period, you just didn't have all of the. Many of these movements are are generated by social media and other kinds of communications. I mean, you know, the whole notion of Juneteenth would not be an issue today. It would not take 2 years for anything to reach Galveston, Texas. It would take 2 seconds. And so, you know, I'm saying this whole the whole notion of social media and all of that have facilitated, I think, a whole different type of leadership and a whole different type of response, to violence and other kinds of things. I mean, the truth of the matter is, during the civil rights movement, we would see Bull Connor and others, putting their dogs on black women and men, spraying them with water and all of that. But you would only see that on the evening news. Okay. Now you could almost see what has happened, with the killings, young people actually recording what's going on, and Mr. Floyd and others, the violence that was perpetrated against them, almost in real time, in a very real sense. And so, I mean, those images are very, very powerful, and I think they keep propelling the movement. It's like it was the television images on the 6 o'clock news, that let people all around the world know how black people were being treated during the 60s, with the police dogs and other kinds of things. And I think the same thing now, with cell phones and other kinds of things. The only issue for me is that these white police can see you recording them, and they really just don't give a damn. They continue to kill blacks, knowing that the camera is running, and knowing that they're being recorded. And the reason for that was because nothing really happened to them heretofore about doing that. So even recently, several of them have been indicted. But as a rule, the police have been a continuation of the slavocracy in a very real sense. I mean, they are a kind of government-sanctioned Ku Klux Klan when it comes to killing blacks.
Wow. What do you think?
Can I push back on a little bit of what Tez said? And this is it's a soft pushback, Tez. It's a soft pushback, dear heart.
I like it hard. Do it hard. Don't be afraid. Do it hard.
Pushback.
But before y'all start pushing back, Dr. Harris, Ted, I'm the only person that can cuss on here. Okay, so I'm the only one that can say give a damn and ask. Y'all can't be doing that. Let me do that. Okay.
All we can say is damn, damn, damn.
Okay. Go ahead, Stevens. Go ahead.
The only pushback I had with Tez is, like I said, it's a soft pushback because I don't think that this is a separation of our theology. I don't think that the church should be separate in this. The church has to be inclusive. A church that is not inclusive does not agree with the text at all. You cannot say that you are just going to be praying and not have your hands in and still believe in our Christ. That is antithetical to our theology. You cannot sit back and say, "Oh, we just gonna pray," when especially, and I'm gonna use Bishop Page because we are unapologetically Pentecostal over here. You cannot say, based on the Acts text, that you have the Holy Ghost, which gives you the ability to do what Jesus did, say what he said in the face of death for the people that you serve. The whole baptism of the Holy Ghost is not about ikanamasha. It's about being able to activate and agitate the way that Jesus did in the face of ensuing death, knowing that you're going to be a witness, let alone the word witness is the Greek word martos, martyr. So I'm activating and agitating, knowing that I'm going to be a martyr to die for the truth of a cause, for those, again, for the least of these. So it's a wake-up call for us in the church, especially for Black church, for those of us that we will take your tithe, but we will not fight for your rights. For those of us that we will drag you to our conferences and we won't be out here and make sure that there is, to Bishop Dixon's point, a voter registration that is happening for us. So this is a wake-up call for us in the Black church that we have to be a part of it. And to your point, Tez, that's why I say it's a soft pushback, is that, again, Jesus's movement started out as one person, to Bishop Dixon's point. It starts out as one movement, but then he makes a prophetic statement. He says, listen, greater works will you do, meaning there's going to be more of you doing what I do. In other words, I'm going to send the rest of y'all out here to do it because people are not smart enough. I think it was Dr. Harris that said it, these words, is that the old movement is one person doing a whole lot of work, and that's one target. Jesus simply said this: I'm going to make sure that all of y'all can do what I do, because guess what? They killed one man who can be in one place at one time. Now we have the Holy Ghost. I'm being churchy. That's my churchy moment. So the movement is now you can't kill all of us. So the Black Lives Matter movement, along with the NAACP, the Urban League, now all of us have to get on the same page, same strategy, moving in the same direction for the same objective, and not having walking headshots, to Bishop Page's point, walking headshots that are opportunists, that are reacting to stuff instead of being in front of the engagement. So the church has to be a part of this. And the church that is not a part of this, again, going back to what the prophet says, if you ain't with me, then we got a problem.
And can I respond? Because I want to clear. We agree.
Hold on, Taz. Say something, Dave. Hold on, Taz.
I think one quick thing to be clarified, and that is, I'm not advocating one single leader. That's the first thing.
Right.
The second thing is, if we get our history right, of course, Dr. King emerged and became the most prominent figure. But he was not the only leader of his time. I think we get popularity and leadership mixed up. They're not the same.
Good point.
Moses was not the only leader of his time, but he was the most prominent, popular leader. Real leaders replicate themselves in others, and real leaders empower others to be leaders. So I'm not suggesting a single leader. Jesus was a single leader of his kind, but he was not the only leader of his movement. And if Jesus had more time, remember he only had 3.5 years. Can you imagine if Jesus had 10 years, how many more leaders he would have developed? Can you imagine if Dr. King had 30 years, how many more leaders he would have developed? Those movements were short-lived, led by a single leader, but they were replicating themselves in others. So I'm suggesting that the anointing is on a leader to replicate him or herself in others, so that a massive leadership group arises, and now the movement can be propelled and expanded. That's the motif that I'm trying to promulgate, which is why I say we got to be educated in this. And then and Ted, to your fair point, you're right. I'm not saying educate just on the old story. So people, we all burn out on that, right? But I'm saying educate this generation on how economics really works in this country. Educate them on how science really works in this country. We are victims of science and don't know it. That people are experimenting on how to get rid of us. We don't understand that. So we got to do real education beyond the surface, so that our people will know how to approach the structures that must be changed. And I think if we focus on that, agitation, keep it going. Walk the streets, protest, do all of that. I do it all. But then educate at the same time, so we can legislate and participate, and that's how we liberate.
Wow.
May I respond, since he pushed back to me? May I respond?
Yeah, Taz, push.
So just to clarify, I certainly wasn't saying that the church has no role. You know, I'm a part-time bootleg preacher myself, so I'm certainly not saying the church has no role, as you can tell. And I'm certainly not saying that there's not leadership within the movement. That's why I pointed to Bishop Dixon as a leader that I actually follow, that him and I have been in marches together, and I look to his leadership. I have even, just to really be very authentic with you, have asked Bishop to lead me, specifically have asked him to, because I'm here at New in Houston, Texas, and I have asked for his leadership to navigate me in the right places. So my comment was not coming from a place of there's no place for the church. My comment certainly was not coming from a place of there's no place for Black leadership within the church. The question is, who are those people? Because everybody's not Bishop Dixon. I can point to the flyer that he's on with Paul Wall and rappers and doing work in the community, but also with the bishops and also with the ministers and also with the legislators. So by no stretch of the imagination, thank you, Bishop Davis, for bringing that up, because I don't want people to misinterpret what I said. There's absolutely a place for the church in leadership. What I am communicating to you is what is the response that we're witnessing, not from me per se, but what the streets is saying. And what they're, and I know you all are engaged in the streets as well. We all are in our own way, but I'm communicating to you the overwhelming pushback that you're getting and that you hear when someone says, just when I shared this, hey, I'm going to be on with bishops tonight and pastors and ministers. Oh, well, we don't want to hear that. We don't want to hear that old time. That coon. We don't want to hear that. They pacify too much. So I'm communicating to you what the streets are saying, not necessarily what I believe or what should be right, or, you know, what is the right thing to do. It is the reality of what we're dealing with and why church participation has gone down. It is why a lot of folks can't get young people in the church. It is why you cannot get them to commit. It is why there is a lack of bishop. I talked about it when we were organizing here in Houston, Texas, and trying to get ministers around. And to be honest with you, the church that I attend, I have put on blinders, because when I go to church now, because I don't want to be disappointed, I go to church now expecting my minister to not be involved. I go in expecting, because when I was in the church and expected my minister to be involved, I found myself getting disappointed. I found myself mixing in politics and mixing in advocacy with the word of God. And it was becoming, what the things he was saying was becoming death on my ears. And so I found myself spiritually depleted for 3 or 4 years, because I kept mixing in my church in Orlando with expecting my minister to be involved. So I said, I can't do that anymore, because now I'm getting depleted. So now I'm just going to go to church and I'm going to hear the word of God, and I'm not going to expect him to be on the front lines with me. I'm going to just let him do what he does. And I had to separate it in my mind. I had to compartmentalize it in my mind, because I found myself not getting spiritually fed. And that is dangerous to the soul of especially people like me that are out here getting death threats. I do Fox News, MSNBC, CNN. I talk this trash to 2.2 million people every week by myself as a single mother. So I am walking in the complete armor of God. So there's no confusion with that. I'm just saying that I had to separate it, because I've seen too many times in the meetings with the politicians. I'm not talking about the ministries, the prison ministries and the food ministries and all of those ministries. I'm talking about in the meetings, not the ministry, in the meeting. I've seen us be sold out too many times in the meeting as Bernie Sanders, racial justice director, that went all over this country organizing with churches. And so it began to turn me away from my foundation of the word. And that doesn't work, because we still need to have folks in the church to have some type of standing and spiritual backbone in the work that we do. So thank you, Bishop, for that pushback, because if you heard that, then that means somebody else heard that, and I wanted to clear that up. So thank you so much, Bishop Davis.
Let me interject this also in the discussion. Since we're classified, well, we kind of defined from the voices that I hear that we're not free. So we're really not, I don't think really can be considered being in a post-racist environment, because we see racism in every sector, every vocation. Racism is alive and well. But from what I hear, this is what I hear. I hear the reason that this generation does not embrace our construct of leadership is because they see it as being antiquated. They see us as leaders being self-absorbed to the point of being narcissistic. They see us being celebrity-driven, not going after the real issues. They don't see us in the trenches with everybody else. And it appears as though, based on what I'm gleaning from everyone, the voice of the church has lost its power, its influence, as it may relate to maybe social issues, not spiritual issues, but social issues. That appears that you can count on one hand men like Bishop James Dixon, who I know is in the trenches. I'm sure everyone else on the panel, they're in the trenches to some degree. But to put our hands on certain people that we know they're doing the work when the camera is off, and I keep going back to that. I got to go back to that, because I think that's very, very important in this 21st century contemporary church age that we live in. Everybody's looking for stardom. They're looking for their names to be promoted and promulgated in lights. They want the stage. They want to be known, but nobody wants the process. Nobody wants to go through the process. I'm struggling with this whole idea, though, that we never get to a solution. When do we get to a solution? Because we have identified the problems. We have identified the issues. When do we get to the solutions? To the point where we are doing things that are productive and constructive towards one another. Now, I know you ain't gonna even like what I'm about to say, but I'm gonna say it anyway. I believe in Black Lives Matter. I got all of that. I appreciate it. It's marvelous, but I still have a problem with black on black crime. I still have a problem with all of that. I know they're killing us, but we killing each other too. When do we start putting as much inference on us doing harm to one another? We're still dealing with sexism, classism, socioeconomic disadvantages, patriarchal, misogyny. All of these things we still as a people have to deal with, even amongst ourselves. What's the solution? What is the real solution to these problems? Because we can talk in theory through subjectivity all night long, but what's the solution? What's the precedence? Who's going to set the precedence for change? I mean, you got sisters like Teslin out there. You got Tiffany, but I don't see a lot of Teslins. I don't see a lot of Tiffany's. I see a lot of people bumping their gums, but I don't see a lot of people sitting together in rooms having conclaves, having conferences, but sitting down trying to invoke a precedent. Who comes up with the precedents? How do we start? What are the solutions?
I think the solutions definitely start with with the discussion. I mean, this is the beginning of maybe developing some solution, but just on my own experience, I remember 8 to 10 years ago, Black people were saying that there was pretty much no racism in America. Young Blacks were saying that racism was over. Now, I don't know if anybody ever heard that as well, but I heard it in my classrooms. I heard it among others. And during the Obama administration, there was not the word protest was never even breathed. It was like a sin to even talk about protest or anything like that.
Hold on, Dr. Harris, stay right there. Let me just ask you a question, and I'm gonna push right there. We had a Black president.
Mm-hmm.
We had a Black president. We had the African American people had a Black president, Obama. Was there much progress with Obama being president? Did we see a radical change with Obama being president? Because I've heard white people say this, Tess. I've heard white people say this, Tiffany, Dixon. I've heard white people say this, Davis. I've heard white people say that. Y'all had a Black president 4 years ago. This can't be a racist country. You've had a Black president. Now, if Obama was a Black president, was there any systemic changes in the construct? We had a Black president.
I think that the Black president said, I think that silence, what it did was it silenced Black people. It silenced Black people. Obama's president silenced Black protest.
Having a Black president silenced us as a people?
It silenced Black protest.
It's silent Black protest. Y'all believe that? Y'all agree with that?
No.
I don't remember a single march or a single protest that was taking place among African Americans during Obama's administration.
I'll yield. Tiffany was about to respond, Dr. Page.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
No. Well, I think that one, our expectations of the Obama administration were really high, really high. But let's back up. We spent the first 4 years in celebration.
That's right. That's right.
Let's be clear.
Come on.
We had never had a black president, and I think sometimes our expectations of one moment for one person are much too high. We're dealing with a construct that has been in place for hundreds of years, and there is no way any one person, black, white, could have become the president of these United States of America and reverse the systemic, oppressive constructs of America. Listen, the financial construct is in place, the educational construct is in place, all of the institutional constructs that are in place and have been in place for 400 years, which is why I tell people, you cannot compare even the best black church to a good white church, because and this is I'm not racist. I want to speak to that in just a moment. But in the white church that's good, you've got members there who have benefited from 400 years of black slave labor. The economic power base that they are supported by is not equal to the black church. When the average black church member gives their tithe, that's money that they decided I'm not going to pay something with to give this tithe. If a member of my church gives $1,000, that's coming out of an account that they would have needed. But when you've got largesse that's been built on 400 years on corporatism, my members are not the same as Ed Young's members or John Hagen's members. So, and I'm not knocking them. I'm only saying you cannot compare the two. So when a black man becomes the president, the first in the history of the nation, you can't compare his capacity to the capacity of a white person who's come from the power construct. When you're not made, you're not birthed from, raised from the power construct of America, you don't have the same voice. You don't have the same relationships. You don't have the same influence. You can have charisma, content, competence, and charm, but you're not a child of the construct. So I think that's very, we always say this, if Barack Obama had done 1/10 of what Donald Trump had done, he would not have become the president. No black man would have become the president with the track record of a Donald Trump, because the power construct would have shut that down. But the power construct is powerful enough that with all of the track record of Donald Trump, he could still become the president.
Well, Trump's president
right now and say what he says right now and still be the president, because the power construct supports that.
So no doubt. I think Trump's president is a it's a product of white racism. It's a backlash to even Obama's being president.
I totally agree with you, Dr. Harris. I agree with you. I yield the floor. I'm saying no, we did not get enough out of that. The Obama administration probably could have gotten more for sure. But I just want to caution us that when you are not a product of the right racism oppressive construct that has been in place for hundreds of years, you are not going to come into that system and revolutionize it. It would take more than that. And I agree with Dr. Harris. We did stop protesting. We spent the first 4 years in celebration and then woke up, and now we're in frustration because the next 4 years passed by that swiftly. We were just so glad to have a black man in office.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Did you say something, Tiffany? Was you going to say something?
Yeah, both from Dr. Harris and Dr. Dixon was so good. I actually sort of forgot, but I must say that, I think that it was the excitement for change. We never thought that in a million years we would see someone that looked like us, a black man, to become president. And to be honest with you, I don't know if we will ever see that again in our lifetime. But I must ask the question that is probably going to make some people upset. Yes, President Obama is charismatic. Yes, he is well polished, but I think we do have to ask the question, could he have done more for the Black community being in office? And to be honest with you, sometimes we have to have these uncomfortable conversations, not just outside of our race, but within our race. And I don't think that we should just give people a pass because they're Black. And we do that a lot. We adopt this thing sort of like a straight ticket voting process. We got 9 states that have straight ticket voting. We just vote Democrat, 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 Republican, 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 Republican. I don't think we should just vote for a person because they are Black. And just because they are Black don't mean that they for Black people. I'm going to say it again. Just because a person is Black does not mean they are for Black people. I'll say it one more time. Just because
you don't have to say it again. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
Not for Black people. Yes, I believe that he was for Black people, but do I think that President Obama could have done more for African Americans? Yes, he could have. He had an opportunity to appoint a Black on the U.S. Supreme Court justice, but he didn't.
Yeah,
there are certain things that he could have done more for the African American community. Do I think that President Obama did a good job? Yes, I think he's charismatic, but we have to be fair. He could have done more to help our community.
But to Dr. Harris's point, who made a great point, he said we stopped protesting. So let me say this, and I'll go back to what Dr. Dixon said, is that Dr. Dixon said something I think that we kind of passed by, is that he talked about there being a prophetic voice. He talked about the whole issue of there has to be somebody that can hold leadership accountable. And part of our lack of protesting during that time caused us to not, while we were in celebration, we still weren't agitated enough to go back and say, hey, Barack, you look like us, your nose is wide like us, and at the end of the day, they still gonna call you the N-word. And guess what? We want some things from you. So without the protest, there was no agitation to the office to say to him, look, again, I think Dr. Dixon said it best. There are some policies and some things that he could have done. We could have literally dealt with, quote unquote, this whole issue of police brutality. That happened during his reign as well. So there are some things that he could have done beside, we're going to get body cams. No, that just means you get to film the brutality from your chest. I mean, so there were other things that could have been done. So while we were in celebration, we weren't agitated enough to hold him accountable from where he came from. So I think that's a big argument. And I agree with Dr. Dixon. Yeah,
I wanna.
You can't get 8 years out of 400 years.
I wanna push back on one thing. Well, not push back. I want to push it to Taz. Something Tiffany said. I don't know. She said something. This is what she said, Taz. She said, just because a person is Black, that doesn't mean that they're for Black people. Is that the proper statement that you made?
Yes.
Tiffany? Taz, I think her picture may have frozen. Dixon, do you agree with that?
Dr. Page, let me tell you, yes, because here's the deal.
Thank you.
Let's work, Dixon. Let's work.
One, how many of us contribute to campaigns? Now let me say this. We can say what we wanted from anybody, Black, white, or brown, but we are not funding campaigns. Now, let me give you a quick scenario. So here's a good person running for city council in any one of our cities. They mean well. They come from among us. They want to make a difference. In Houston, it's going to cost you $500,000. They're about to win a citywide election, $350,000 to $500,000. Now, that's what that election is going to cost. If that individual raises out of that $500,000, $400,000 of that comes from the business community that we don't own. $100,000 from that comes to their friends and family from fish fries. When that person gets elected, it's going to be very difficult for their priorities not to include in a large way those who help that person get elected and will make sure they get reelected. I'm saying that when I say participate, we have got to do more than talk in our churches. Come on, pastors. The tithers and the generous givers keep the doors open, pay the bills. That counts for something. That just counts for something. And I'm saying to us, we got to participate all the way. And we got a election structure in our nation where it costs too much money to get elected. That's why campaign reform, as Tez has talked about, is necessary. Campaign finance reform is necessary because it gets more and more expensive to win those offices. And when those persons are running for office, if it's going to cost $200 million to run an office, think about how much money did they spend this year, Tez? $1.2 billion running for office to become the president. Campaign finance reform is essential because without it, corporatism is what's making these decisions. Corporatism is what keeps us oppressed. And we're not educating about the power of corporatism. Let me close with this because I know, and I'm not going to say another word, Dr. Page, because I know the time is off. But I live in Texas where Juneteenth is officially enacted. I will say to you that when the Emancipation Proclamation was signed, it was for all the states. It was just that the Union did not have enough forces in Texas to enforce the emancipation. So now for 2 years, the Union soldiers here were held at bay by the Southerners, by the South. Now, and here's my point. When you understand how power works, how power really works, you know what buttons to push. You were right, Tiffany. We did not go with an agenda to Barack Obama because we were still in celebration. But let me say this to you. When you're the first kid to graduate from high school in your family for the last 50 years, the family gonna throw you a party like you're a Rhodes Scholar. And all you got was a diploma. But you're the first one to do it. I'm saying, y'all, Barack was the first one to pull it off. So for us, we were just so glad that it could ever happen. So I don't think we should be so hard on ourselves and on Barack when we've been oppressed for all those years and finally got one who could make it. So I'm simply saying to us, let's now do our homework, come back again and understand how the power structure really works, because there's some more Black presidents who are out there. We just got to have the power structure that we control to put them in place with our agenda, so it's not coming late with the agenda. We're first with that agenda.
Real quick, 30 seconds. I want to be clear. I'm not trying to be hard on President Obama. I'm a Barack Obama fan. But what I am, and I do understand that there are some things that he couldn't do because of Congress, because just how the president can veto, Congress can veto. You have different types of package, line item, and pocket veto. I understand that. But there are some things that I'm going to stand by that he could have done. And I do think that, yes, because we are so excited, we also have to keep in mind, we don't know when this will happen again. So while we're in celebration mode that this is our brother over here and we having barbecues that Barack and Michelle are in the White House, we don't know if it will ever happen again in our lifetime. And we should not give him a pass because he are Black. Now, I want to be clear. When I say that Black people are just because you're Black doesn't mean you're Black. I'm not just talking about Barack Obama.
Okay, hold on, Tiff. I want to get Tez in here because she keeps dropping in and out, but I want to get her in here. Tez, this is, of course, I don't want anyone to think that I am initiating bashing Obama. That was not my point at all. I was on the heels of something Dr. Harris has stated about. So I want to get the whole idea about the Black president. Is this really a post-racist day that we live in, because we have had a Black president and that's how it all came about? What has he done? So Tez, in your opinion, has there been much progress since he's been in the office?
Looks like frozen.
Froze again?
Dr. Page.
Yes.
She froze again. And I apologize. I've got to go get my son in just a minute. But I can say this, rather than waiting for a black person to become the president again, we need to have a black power agenda for whoever that president becomes.
I've always said,
I hope I'm coming through because it's buffering real bad on my end.
No, it's not coming through, Ted.
But it's okay, Bishop. I know you said you don't want anybody to think you bashing President Obama. And let me say to the family,
We can't hear her.
okay, can you hear me?
Hear you now, yes.
Okay. So I know you said, Bishop, you don't want people to think you're bashing President Obama, so I'll take up the slack. I could care less what folks think I'm saying in the comments. This just really comes down to straight shot, no chaser. So I'll take it from here, Sister Tiffany, and have your back on this. This is not about, somebody in the comments, because I'm reading the comments and they said, Barack Obama couldn't do anything. It wasn't his fault. Again, let's look at President Trump. President Trump does what he wants to do and how he wants to do it, period. Until we get that type of leadership, that if it means signing an executive order, if it means upsetting folks, if it means I don't have friends on both sides of the aisle, it is the reason why the Democrat Party lost the Congress in 2012. The things that President Trump is trying to push, he could care less if Congress supports him. He could care less if Democrats support him. Democrats are the only ones, because we have a codependent spirit of always making excuses. It's not about putting too much on Barack Obama, and it's not about not saying that he did a good job. It is about talking about the issues at hand, which is simple and plain. Did you deliver on the policies that folks expected? I never expected it, to be quite honest with you. I knew that it was going to be a celebration for 4 years. It's not about what Bishop just said, one person. It's about the policy. And so until we start really focusing, and not like I said earlier, not just about Barack Obama, what about at the local level? What about your mayor? What about your governor? What about your city council? People got all this smoke for one president, but yet they skip over about 6 or 7 different levels of leadership that you can look directly into their face on a weekly basis. So when Bishop is right when he talks about we have to take big money out of politics, but at the same time, somebody need to buy a politician. And when you're buying a politician, it requires you to call them out. Like the church says, call them out in love. 2 weeks ago, when George Floyd was killed, Attorney Benjamin Crump and I were on the Breakfast Club. And I said flat out to Senator Amy Klobuchar that the gig is up. That if she thinks she's about to be vice president, knowing that if it had not been for her lack of leadership, that the person that killed George Floyd would have not gotten away with 14 times with no discipline, actually 17 times with no disciplinary action. See, that came from a Democrat. That wasn't Trump. This was somebody that was about to be the vice president of the United States because she was the only one that they publicly announced that was being vetted. It took folks like me, Charlemagne, Angela Rye, several other people in the media, and a lot of other pressure from the ground up that said, oh no, Amy, we see your record. We're going to hold you accountable. And notice last night that she dropped out of being on the VP. Why did she do that? Because we called her out for what it was. I'm not more in love with Barack Obama than I am in love with you. I'm not more in love with Barack Obama from Hawaii than I'm more in love from where I came from, North Highlands in Oklahoma City. My aunt has pictures, I always tease her about this, has pictures of Barack Obama all on the refrigerator, all on the wall. Meanwhile, my picture's way in the back in the guest room. Something wrong psychologically that we have become so engaged with somebody that didn't grow up the way that I did not have a black mother, definitely didn't come from the hood, have not lived my experience, went to Chicago strategically to be a part of the South Side Chicago. So I am proud of him as a symbol of what can be done. But I am always going to push a black agenda, a black agenda, a black agenda. That goes for right now with Joe Biden. It's not about being so caught up. We got to, Lord, we just got to get Trump out, Lord. Anything we got to do to get Trump out. What difference will it make if we got to continue to keep picking a lesser of the two evils? Where's the Black agenda? Where's the apology for mass incarceration, locking up more Black men than those who were incarcerated in 1850? Not only is Joe Biden trying to put more money, not take away money from the police, but he's adding to it. These are the questions that we ask. This is why he had the audacity to get on Breakfast Club and tell Charlamagne that if you don't vote for me, then you ain't Black. Because we've been sitting around here applauding, and we haven't been applying pressure. This is about pressure. This is not about celebrity and how much we love and how cute Obama is and Michelle is and they cute kids and what we love about her arms and how good they look. This is about pressure for our people. And until we do that, we're going to see more of the same. The same energy you give Trump, you should give to your mayor and give to your governor and give to your city council. And Barack Obama's term is over with. He's over with. He's moved on. Now, what are we doing now to make sure leadership now has our best interests in mind, and to say that if you do not support our interests, you can no longer use us as the mistress of the Democrat Party. We are done being the side chick. We want to be married. We want a ring. We want to do like the blues song say, put it on paper. Until it's on paper, all of this is nothing but just a bunch of talk. So it does. We have to get to a place where I don't mind when they say in the comments, oh Lord, she talking about Barack. Oh Lordy. Let them get upset. This is about pricking the conscience of our spirits. This is about getting in uncomfortable situations, because this is why we never move forward, Bishop. This is why our generation doesn't want to follow the leadership. I said it with Bishop Dixon on the stage when we went down to fight for Donald Neely. I said the same thing that I'm telling you now. I said, this is why the generation does not follow this leadership, because we're too busy making side deals. We're too busy giving everything away. We're too busy worrying about what they think of us and going to the gala. You don't never have to invite me to the NAACP gala, but I know I'm always be welcome in Crenshaw, California, Crenshaw Mafia. That's for sure. The least of these will always welcome me. So until we get to that space, and I'm going to shut up because I know we're wrapping up. But shout out to Michelle. I'm looking at her comment because I know she had said earlier, oh, Barack couldn't do nothing. She's saying now that I'm the truth. Barack could have done the same thing Trump is doing. The same way he did it for immigration, the LGBT community, and everybody else. When you have the power of the pen and the bully pulpit, known as the president of the United States, he could have done the same thing. Trump is the best and worst thing that ever happened to Black folks, because now you know that Trump is a gangster for real. He's the real NIGGA president is what I say, because he don't care what y'all think. He moving for his people, period. I'm looking for that kind of leadership. If that means I got to deal with you on Twitter embarrassing us, that's fine for me. We got to get off the high horse. It's no longer about when they go high, when they go low, we gonna go high. No, we gonna meet you where you at. I need you to understand where we at, eyeball to eyeball in 2020, new vision, new clear reality, 2020. That is why we're in the year that we're living in. That's why we have a pandemic. That is why we have people marching the streets. This is about purpose and about prophesizing on what God has called us to do. Either we're with it or we're not. I'm shutting up. That's the end of it for me.
Listen. It's 9:12. This is what I need to do. Bishop Dixon had to get off. He had another engagement with his son, but this is what I need to do. I need to wrap this up, but I want to wrap this up with some final statements and some comments from our panel. And I need you to do this in 2 minutes. I need you to do this in 2 minutes. All right. In terms of solution, in terms of agenda, what can be done right now? I mean, what in your perspective, what could really be done right now that will be impactful enough that other than, and you may answer that by saying riots, turning cars over, burning buildings down. I mean, outside of that, Tess, outside of that, what can we really do now that's going to make a change? And I'll start with Tiffany. I'll go to Dr. Harris. I'll go to Taz, and then Sterling, you have the last word. Yes, Tiff.
Wow. I definitely think that, going back to what Ted said earlier, is voting, not just on the federal level, but in your community, local and state elections. Those elections are important. And I think it's not just about going to a protest and singing "Wade in the Water, God's gonna trouble the water," but what happens after that? We get excited about charges, but we see the story over and over again. We see the charges, but we don't see a conviction. And I think that it is about going to the poll, putting pressure on our legislators from the state level, from local levels, as well as the federal level. I'm going to yield to you all.
Dr. Harris.
Well, I think that the only thing that white people understand is first violence and second economics. I mean, I think that that clearly when Nat Turner killed 72 white people, and Nat Turner killed 72 white people. I mean, it changed the laws in Virginia, and it put the whole South on notice that that slaves, the narrative that they were pushing was that slaves were happy with slavery. I think after the Nat Turner killing of 72 white people, nobody could ever make that claim again. And I think it's quite true that whatever violence that blacks display, they pretty much learned it from white people. This nation was founded on violence. I mean, how do you discover a nation or a country that it's already inhabited? And so white people have, they're the most violent people that I know. And blacks, as a rule, are loving and kind, and I still stick to that. So I'm encouraging the blacks, the young blacks, to continue to get out there and protest. And if you have to burn down the police station and Wendy's and other places, because black people don't own these things anyway, so just burn them down. It's okay. That's the only thing. I'm saying that's the only thing that these white people are going to listen to. They're not going to listen to any negotiations, no prayers, no laying on of hands, none of that. None of that is going to affect the way these people are going to respond. And I mean, I think the history shows it. That's the only thing that they respond to.
All right, Dr. Harris, you got to go. He said, burn it all down. Tess.
We changed Dr. Harris because he had a different tune when we first started out. Somebody want to rewind the clip? We done converted Dr. Harris. Well, I'll just say this. It's not about just voter registration. I tell people all the time, I'm looking for a rider. I come from the spirit of Tupac. I'm a rider and ambition of a rider, and you don't want to mess with me. It's one thing to talk about registration, but if ain't nobody willing to ride and really be able to risk it all, which I call the consequences of consciousness, the consequences of losing a job, risking your life, and so forth, then really the best thing you can do is support those of us who do. I know it is important to have allies, and so you'll hear people say we need allies, and that's fine. We're going to go ahead and let a bishop somewhere pray for allies, but I'm looking for soldiers. I'm not looking for allies. At this point, we have to learn how to stand on our own 2 feet and get off of our knees. Policy wise, we do need to be pushing the Justice and Reform Act. We need to be demanding that from our local leadership. Houston, Texas has banned chokeholds. That was an excellent move by Mayor Turner. Look for those types of things in your local leadership. Keep the pressure, but keeping the pressure is not just voting. You have to call these people out. Don't just be in the pulpit and in your pulpit and saying, well, I can't do it because I'm a 501c3, but then you seem to always be available to take the benefit of working with an elected official, but not wanting to actually be the push to demand that they do better by our communities. And in closing, you don't have to worry about it, Bishop. The streets has the movement now. It is above us now. They're not doing no Zoom, not having conversations. The bottom line is you continue to keep killing us in these streets. There will be consequences and repercussions. That's where we are. And it's up to America to fix it, not us to keep explaining why we loving people. All of us ain't loving. I got some cousins that's about the business. We don't have to fix America's problem. It's not on these families to ask, oh, y'all stop doing violence. It's not on them to fix America's problems. It's not on us to tell America to stand down or, hey, y'all calm down. America needs to fix this. It's very simple. Put the policy in place and we won't have no more problems. Until then, you're going to get dealt with how you give it to us, period, point blank.
I love you, Taz. Thank you, Taz. Bishop Davis, go ahead.
Again, thank you, Bishop, for having us on tonight. It's been an amazing conversation. Got a lot of education, and I appreciate it. Again, Bishop Dixon, honor you, man, for the work that you do and for who you are. We talk about solutions. Dr. James Hal Cone says something amazing when you look at his dissertation about the cry of Black blood. And when he talks about that, his big deal is that we have a responsibility to those who have given their life to move us to where we are. So I think the first thing is when we talk about solutions, yes, we got to vote, registration, all that. I agree with Tez. There's got to be some more agitation and activation. But I think Bishop Dixon hit something I think that I don't know if we missed it or not. The issue of an agenda, the issue of strategy. It's like we talk about this at funerals. You know, it's great that y'all came here with the flowers and y'all at the repast, but the family's gonna need you after this. And so that's what we're talking about now. If we get 45 out, that ain't the issue. What's the agenda? What are we pushing? What's the strategy? And can we come together on the strategy? And if we can do that, I promise you, not only can we move a nation, we can move a world like we've always been doing since the beginning of time. So that's what we are right now.
Wow. Profound. Thank you, Doc. That's profound. Thank you, Sterling. Dr. Dixon, you started it, so we're gonna let you wrap it up. What's the solution? What can we do?
Well, let me first of all, I have to thank you, Dr. Page, for this erudite conversation. It was very powerful, prolific, and some charismatic people who are very courageous. And so my hat's off to all of them. Each one of them have been valuable to this conversation tonight. I think that, again, I'm back to this piece on education. We are responding right now to the violence in the streets, police brutality. That's the most public version of racism and oppression that we see. But let's be clear, the most prolific versions of racism and oppression and discrimination are not what we see on the 6 o'clock news. And no one's responding to that. The construct of oppression is not going to ever be what you see happen on the street corner. It's institutionalized racism. It's systemic discrimination. And we got to understand that you change that by addressing it within the construct of institutions. And that's never going to make the 6 o'clock news. That's not bloodshed on the street. Now understand, I am absolutely out here working hard to end police brutality. But can I tell you, no one talks about sex and human trafficking. And the fact that Black and brown people are more heavily trafficked in America and in our cities than any other people. Who's controlling that? No one's talking. In Texas alone, 80,000 children are trafficked every day in Texas alone. 300,000 adults. The vast majority of those children and adults are children. That's modern day slavery, as some would call it. It's happening right now. And that's not making the 6 o'clock news. Black and brown children are going missing every day, and we're not searching for them. That's not even a part of our church's conversation, right? So that's a big issue. But within the construct of corporatism, that is massive oppression. That's why education, Dr. Page, is so very, very necessary. And when you understand the big issues, Blacks cannot do it alone. And so I don't advocate that we can only do this as Black Lives Matter or just the NAACP. We need all of those. But we're building coalition, one family, one future. Acts 17:26 says, of one blood, God made all people. So that means we're all one human family. Racism is founded on a false predicate that there are more than one race. There's got to be more than one race to have superiority and inferiority. Education means to say, no, we are one human race. We've got to be bold enough and courageous enough to teach that. And if you're only responding out of being mad and emotional, you're going to miss that. That theological motif has the power of changing psychological and sociological realities. But we got to be coalesced with Black, whites, browns, Christians, Jews, Muslims, people who believe in this fundamental truth that of one blood we're all created. If you form coalition, then you can change corporate institutional power structure. You cannot do that with a few black people agitated. That's necessary. Agitation, then education, and then legislation. Participation is going to take all of that. And I'm leaving with this. If you go on my website, one family, one future.org, you'll see that we're working with blacks, whites, browns, Jews, Catholics, the Jewish community, and building a love force, a human love force that's committed to eradicating racism, liberating the oppressed, and educating a generation on fundamental truths. If you do that, you'll have the power to conquer and to overcome. And we cannot do it alone. If black people keep saying black, 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 and that's all. Now, I'm as black as you're going to get. But I understand that black is my skin color. But my content, the content of my character is who makes me who I am. And if we really believe that message, we got to put our arms around people who believe like us and march with them, protest with them, let them protest with us, but then let's address the legislative agenda, because policy governs behavior. And that's what the power is in this structure. We got to do that.
Dr. Dixon, thank you so much, Dick. That was powerful. That was powerful. Listen, what a discussion tonight. Agitation, education, legislation, participation, a tremendous discussion. Of course, there's no way that we could, in 2 hours, come up with an agenda and a conclusion to what all of us have as a concern as it relates to this systemic racism in our country. But I want you to take note of this. Acts 17 and 26, and it says something like this: out of one blood, he have made out of one blood every nation to men to dwell on the face of the earth, out of one blood. So in the mind of God, he never intended for there to be racial disparity, ethnic discourse. Out of one blood, all the nations of the world were to dwell on the planet Earth. Acts 17:26. I want you to consider this tonight. Everything that this great panel has presented and given to you, it was spirited, it was sobering, it was thought-provoking. Every panelist was prolific in their own way. We have to continue these types of dialogue. As Dr. Tiffany Lloyd said, it's very uncomfortable, but iron sharpeneth iron. We're supposed to be better as we sharpen, as we galvanize, as we put pressure on one another. It only makes us better. Well, we'll pick this up, and hopefully we can continue this conversation, maybe with a different topic, title, next week, next Friday, who knows? But this was awesome tonight. Absolutely awesome. Now, if you was blessed, I need you to sow. Sow seed tonight. 3 platforms to sow: Cash App, $ Highway 371, PayPal, Givelify. We need you to sow into the ministry. If this was a blessing to your life, if this was a blessing in your life, I want you to sow seed. I want you to be a blessing to the ministry on tonight. We want to thank all of the panelists. They were tremendous. They were outstanding. And I cannot wait until we can do it again. All right. Well, the Lord bless you. Don't forget, this Sunday is Father's Day. Father's Day. And we will be in cyber worship at 10 a.m. I'll be teaching and preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ. And on Sunday night at 7 p.m., our hour power, I'll be back again. And the Spirit of the Lord is going to meet us all day on Sunday. All right. Don't forget tomorrow, prayer 12 to 1 o'clock. That's 12 noon to 1 o'clock. I'm looking to see and hear all of you online tomorrow at 12 to 1. All right. The Lord bless you. Heaven smile upon you. May the grace of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ and the sweet communion of the Holy Ghost rest, rule, and abide with these thy people henceforth, now, and forevermore. And let all the people of God say amen and amen. Continue to interact with each other in the chat. Visit our website as well, highwaychurchinternational.org. That's highwaychurchinternational.org. All right. The Lord bless you. Have a good night. God bless.